is the fundamental law that defines the foreign policy of the country. That does not change unless you amend the Constitution. And what does the Constitution say? We pursue an independent foreign policy for the purpose of carrying out the paramount national interests. And in so doing, we must uphold our sovereignty, our territorial integrity, and the people's right for self-determination. And above all, we renounce war as an instrument of national policy, and we promote amity amongst all nations. This has been the policy laid out by the fundamental law since we adopted the Constitution of the Philippines as it is today. The problem was carrying out the independent foreign policy, independent foreign relations has not been pursued in the manner contemplated. We had always been subservient to some foreign country in carrying out that foreign policy. But what did the President say, and how will he make a difference in claiming that we will now proceed with an independent foreign policy? It simply means, and he simply meant, that we will carry out an independent foreign policy in that the paramount national interests will be always pursued and not compromised. Now we know that in maintaining amity with all nations, especially even in pursuing and strengthening further our traditional partners and ally, we will have mutual interests that will converge. And when we have this convergence of mutual interests, an independent foreign policy requires that we pursue this to the hilt for the mutual benefit of the countries concerned. This is what we plan to do. The difference between the previous administration was, for instance, in pursuing the paramount national interest with respect, for instance, to the South China Sea. We did so by alienating another nation when we did not have to. We did so by showing a bias and preference for another nation when we did not have so. An independent foreign policy does not mean that if we forge closer friendship with China, we will be weakening our friendship with the United States. No. In the South China Sea, for instance, we already won in the arbitral tribunal insofar as our claim that the 200-mile exclusive economic zone in that area covered in the South China Sea is indeed ours, and we are entitled to the maritime resources, both living and non-living, in that area to exclusively exploit and utilize for our people. We set, or the arbitral tribunal's decision provided for the legal platform that strengthened the legal basis for our claim and serves as a basis for us to now move forward with the diplomatic processes to make sure that the decision of the arbitral tribunal would be implemented. We know that the arbitral tribunal does not have any enforcement capacity, and the 1982 United Nations Law of the Seas requires that in the implementation, we will have to resort to agreements with the other claimants. And therefore, it is important that we engage our country in bilateral talks to make sure that we can come up with these agreements or a code of conduct under which we will be able to peacefully settle our disputes. Let there be no doubt that it is not easy to settle our disputes with China with respect to the West Philippine Sea. They claim that the territory is theirs. They claim that they will not talk to us if we will talk to them within the confines of the decision of the arbitral tribunal or outside of the framework of the arbitral tribunal, and we say we will only talk to them eventually within the framework of that ruling. But we also know that we will fight and defend our rights insofar as our exclusive economic zone is concerned, and we will not allow anybody to prevent us from utilizing the living and resources there for our own exclusive benefit. But this is only a small portion of our relationship with China. There are other relationships that must be pursued and strengthened, such as trade, investment, even cultural exchanges, people-to-people contact, and so on, that we must pursue in the national interest without eroding our entitlements under our exclusive economic zone. And this is exactly what we are doing. Nobody and no country can dictate on us on how to do this. That is precisely why we do not want to engage any other nations in a so-called multilateral talks, because insofar as our exclusive economic zone in the South China Sea is concerned, there are only two claimants. There are no other claimants. It is the Philippines and China. So why will you include third parties? You will just confuse and make more complicated and complex the peaceful settlement. No one wants to engage in war in the settlement of disputes. Even China does not want to engage the Philippines in war insofar as the dispute in the China Sea is concerned, South China Sea is concerned, in the same manner that we will never engage anybody, because this is what our Constitution prohibits us from doing. Moreover, we can never win against any superpower.